I was standing at my own kitchen counter, writing my daughter a check for $900, when she told me the rent would be going up in January. I did not stop writing. I finished the date and the amount, and I signed it the way I have signed my name since 1968. Then I asked her how much. She said $975, and she said it the way you'd tell somebody the weather. What kind of arithmetic ends with a woman paying rent in a house she paid off herself in 1994? And which one of us, standing in that kitchen, actually believed it was going to work? My name is Marion Kessler. I am 76 years old, and I signed that house over to my daughter Sandra on a Tuesday in March of 2021, because a woman at church told me it was the smart way to avoid probate. There was no attorney. That is the part I would take back, if I were allowed to take back one thing. There was a deed from the office supply store, a notary at the bank who did not read it, and my daughter saying the words that I chose to hear as a promise. She said, "Mom, nothing changes. This is your house until you don't want it anymore." I believed her. I want to be honest. I did not believe her the way a fool believes a stranger. I believed her the way a mother believes the child she sat up with through croup and college applications and one very bad marriage. 14 months later, an envelope came. Inside it was a lease, a real one, printed off the internet with my name typed in the tenant line. $900 a month, due on the 1st, late fee after the 5th. Sandra came by that evening to explain it, and she was not cruel about it. I need you to understand that because it would be easier if she had been. She sat at my table with her car keys still in her hand, and she said that Rick's hours had been cut, that the property taxes were now in her name, that this was just how families handle things now. And then she said the sentence. She said, "It's not personal, Mom, you're a tenant now." I looked at the chair she was sitting in. I bought that chair. I said, "All right." That is all I said, "All right." And she was so relieved that she hugged me on the way out, and I stood in the doorway and watched her taillights go down Ashmore Street, and I thought, all right then, we'll do it your way. I paid the first one on May the 1st. Here is what I want to tell you about those checks, and I promise it matters. I could have paid her online. Sandra asked me to, twice. She said it would be easier, and it would have been. But I have written checks my whole life, and my hands know the shape of it, and I was not in a hurry to make anything easier for anybody that spring. So I bought a new book of checks from the credit union, the plain blue ones, and I sat down at the kitchen table on the 1st of every month, and I wrote one out longhand. And on the memo line, every single time, I wrote the same 7 words. Rent. Paid in full. With love, Mom. I did not do it to be clever. I want to say that plainly because when this was over, people wanted very badly to believe I had been building something, and I wasn't. I wrote it because it was true, and because it was the only place left in that whole arrangement where I still got to say anything at all. 14 checks. $12,600 out of a retirement I had counted very carefully in 1994 and had not planned to spend on rent. She cashed every one. Things got smaller after that, the way they do. In August, she asked me not to use the front room when she showed the house to a friend of Rick's. In October, she took the storm windows off and did not put them back, and when I mentioned the draft in the bedroom, she said she'd get to it, and she did not get to it. In December, I paid $975 for the first time, and in February she came by on a Sunday with a man I had never met, and they walked the property line at the back of the lot with a tablet, and she told me afterward that they were just getting a number. I asked her what number. She said, "Mom, don't. Stay with me here because in about 4 minutes my daughter is going to do something that she genuinely believed was the simple option, and it is the thing that ends her. It was not my doing. I had not done a single thing except pay my rent on time. Stay with me, and I promise the ending is worth every minute." In March, she told me I had 60 days. She had a buyer, cash, no inspection contingency, closing in the spring. She said she'd help me find somewhere with less upkeep, and she used the word blessing about the timing, and I remember looking at the geraniums on the step and thinking they would need dividing in April and I would not be here to do it. I said, "All right." I said it the same way I'd said it the first time, and I think that is what convinced her because she left that afternoon looking lighter than she had in a year. Then 60 days passed, and I did not go anywhere, not out of defiance. I had nowhere to go that I could afford, and I had spent 14 months paying somebody $900 a month, and I was 76 years old and very tired. She called. Then she came. Then Rick came, which was worse, because Rick is a decent enough man who has never once in 20 years known what to do with his hands. And on a Thursday in June, My daughter did the thing that people do when a person will not leave a house. She filed to evict me. I do not think she understood what she was signing. I have gone back and forth about that for a long time now, and I have landed, mostly, on believing she did not. Because here is the thing that nobody in that family knew, including me, until a very patient woman at the county legal aid office explained it to me across a folding table. When you charge a person rent, and that person pays it, and you cash the check, that person is your tenant. Not your mother, not a house guest, not somebody staying on. A tenant. With every protection the state gives a tenant, which is not many but is more than none. You cannot put a tenant's things on the lawn. You have to go to court. You have to stand up in front of a judge, in a public room, in the county where you have lived your whole life, and you have to explain why this person should be removed, and the court will want to see the checks. All of them. Stay with me just a little longer, because we are at the morning of the hearing now, and I would like you in that room. It is a small room. Everybody in it knew my late husband. Stay for this part. The hearing was on a Tuesday at 9:15, in a courtroom with 11 benches and a radiator that knocked. Sandra had an attorney. I did not. I had the woman from legal aid, who had 4 other cases that morning, and who was, I want the record to show, worth every one of the $0 I paid her. There were maybe 9 people in the gallery. In a county this size, a docket is a public thing, and people read it. Sandra's attorney explained the tenancy, and the notice, and the 60 days. It was all correct. He was not a bad man doing it. Then the judge asked for the payment history. And the clerk, a young man, 25 maybe, with a very careful voice, began to read the checks into the record. That is the procedure. Date, amount, and the notation one by one, because the notation is part of the instrument. He said, May 1st, $900. Memo line reads, rent, paid in full, with love, Mom. Then he said June, then July. By the 4th one, the room had changed. I could hear it. A courtroom makes a particular kind of quiet when 9 people all decide at the same moment not to move. He read all 14. 14 times, in a flat, careful voice, in a public room, my daughter heard somebody say with love, Mom, while she sat at a table asking a judge to remove me from a house I had given her for free. She did not look at me. Not once, through all 14. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that because I think you might expect me to. I felt sick. That is my child. I sat on a wooden bench and listened to my own handwriting be read out against her, and I wanted, more than I have wanted anything in years, to stand up and tell them all to stop. If you have ever won something against somebody you love and found it tasted like nothing at all, I think you already know exactly where I was sitting. Tell me about it in the comments. I read them, all of them, and I would like to know I am not the only one. The judge ruled that the eviction was improper on the notice period and dismissed it without prejudice, which is a technical way of saying, not like this, and not today. That was all I got. It was enough. It bought a stay, and the stay bought time, and time was the only thing I actually needed. What I did not expect was the rest of it. Sandra's attorney withdrew the following week. I never learned why, and I have not asked. Rick moved out in September. That was not my doing either, and I have never once been glad about it. And a man named Terrence Boyd, who owns the hardware store on 3rd and who was in that gallery that morning, drove out to the house in July, put my storm windows back on, and refused to be paid. He said, Marion, I knew Walt. That was the whole conversation. I cried in the kitchen for about 10 minutes after he left. The house never sold. Sandra let the listing expire in October. We have not discussed it. She still owns it. That has not changed, and I do not expect it to, and I have made a kind of peace with the fact that I gave away the only thing I had on a Tuesday in March because a woman at church was confident. She comes on Sundays now. She sits in the chair I bought. We talk about the weather and about her sister in Ohio, and we do not talk about June, and I have decided that not talking about it is a thing 2 people can survive. I do not charge her rent. She has not offered. I am 76. I gave away my house, and I paid rent to live in it, and I lost more than I won. But I wrote the truth on 14 pieces of paper, at a kitchen table, on the 1st of every month, when there was nobody in the room to see it and no reason at all to think it would ever matter. That is the whole lesson, and it is not a clever one. Be exactly who you are, in writing, even when it costs you $900 a month. Somebody official may have to read it out loud one day, and on that day you will want it to have been true. If Marion's story stayed with you tonight, stay close. There are more of them waiting for you here, and every one is about somebody who stayed decent longer than anybody expected them to.